Hey, what's up? Hope everyone's doing good today. Today is Numbers 23 through Deuteronomy 4. And so this week was really interesting. And all of them are pretty interesting. I don't know. I guess it's not so much more interesting compared to other weeks. But, Numbers, it's the end of Numbers, and it's the beginning of Deuteronomy. And so it's kind of getting to the exciting part where the Israelites actually make it out of the wandering in the wilderness, and they come to the promised land. And so I think it's getting exciting. I don't necessarily think it is exciting yet, but I think it's starting to get exciting, which is kind of exciting. And in the wilderness, I think there was some pretty eventful things that happen. But a lot of it is just like the law. And I think the law is actually pretty good. And at the very ending of Deuteronomy, the very ending of Numbers, I think it's the very ending of Numbers or beginning of Deuteronomy, they talk about how people are going to see the law, and they're going to see how great the law is, and then how they're going to be like, okay, these people are so great that have such a great law that God has given them. And I think that's going to bring them prosperity. It's going to make it so other people rally behind them and rally to their cause and rally to the Jews. And so the law is really cool. It takes a long time to write down the law and all the different things that are happening. But I feel like they're pretty much starting from scratch. They're starting all over, and they're wandering, and they're coming to the realization that there's only one God, and He's in control of everything. And the law that God puts down in their hearts, or God puts down for them to follow, is really important, and it's really awesome. And it has a lot of good characteristics and a lot of good things that come from it. And so I think it's just exciting because now you have the Jews, and God brought them out of Egypt, and He showed all His wonders, and then they had them in the wilderness, and He's helping them all the time. He's done all these crazy things for them, or all these amazing things for them, and then now He's given them this law. He has His people, and He's fulfilled, what He's told Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, how they're going to make their seeds, as numerous as the stars in the sky, and how people are going to prosper from it and have great things from. So now God's fulfilling His promise, or what He said He was going to do, and now the people are actually seeing that come to fruition, and it's pretty exciting. And then God's obviously done some pretty cool things, and if you really understand this as history, then what God has done for them is pretty amazing, and all the people around it are seeing it. So this is exciting. It's an exciting time not only for the Jews, but it's an exciting time for the whole entire world. And I think sometimes that's lost, that's missed, but it's just an exciting time. It's a big change in the world. And so for the Jews too, obviously, but for everyone around that's hearing all these rumors and all this crazy stuff that's happening, it's a very exciting time for everyone. And a lot of things that happen are pretty horrendous, but it's exciting for everybody for a time, old age to pass and new age to begin. And so it's exciting. And so from what I have, because like I said, I always try to have each day, Monday through Friday, I like to have a main theme that was in what the reading was. And the reading was Numbers 23 through Deuteronomy 4. And so the first day that I had was vows. And, it's interesting because, we're told not to promise at all. And Jesus says, everything, or Jesus tells us to yes be yes and no's be no's. And in the letters that Paul and the other, prophets and saints write, or apostles. I'm not exactly sure if you call them apostles, saints, prophets. I'm not sure what the letters in the Old Testament would refer to the writers as. Maybe D, all the above. But at any rate, the writers in the New Testament with the letters, they also reflect this idea that, your yes be yes and your no's be no's. Don't promise or swear anything more than just yes and no's of the evil one. But initially, they had the vows, and so like vows are really important. It was important for a person to follow through with the vow that they gave and what they did. And it's just, I think it's because, you have an environment where the whole entire society, the whole entire culture, the whole entire thing around you was based on these laws that God gave. And so it's a completely different type of environment that you have now, where you have the unbelievers and the believers having to mingle together. And it's hard to know where a believer is and unbeliever ends sometimes. And so it's a completely different environment. So you have these vows that were really important in the Old Testament, and now you're not even to vow at all. And so it's just a very different dynamic and a different way of living. And I think it's important to kind of reflect on that. We're told to, swear when we go to court, tell the truth to help me God, but you're not even supposed to do that at all. And you have your marriage vows, but you're not even supposed to have any vows at all. So it's just a lot of these rules and laws that we see in Western society, at least in America, these are based on Old Testament theology. These aren't Christian things at all. These are Old Testament. These vows and these promises are from the Old Testament. This is not for us, the New Testament, for us to do. So I think it's a showing sometimes of Jewish influence or Old Testament influence on the society, or just maybe people not understanding what the Bible is really saying. and what's really going on there. But yeah, this is Old Testament theology. This is a New Testament way of doing things when it comes to these vows, to these marriages, and in the court of law. So it's just kind of interesting. And so that was for Monday. Tuesday, I had, for my kind of reflection that I had, was God tells the Israelites how the land will be divided, and He divides them of the different tribes. And sometimes I think, okay, so God pretty much fills in the gaps where the people weren't able to. So I feel like, I don't know for sure, but I feel like, for at least God puts in my heart, that the Israelites weren't able to maybe determine who gets what land and how the land's going to be divided exactly. And so God divides it for them and tells them how to build and where everything's going to be, and how, there's to a lot, there's going to be given a lot, and to those that, there's not that many, there's going to be less given. And He gives really precise instructions, I think, to kind of break up any type of argument or strife that would come about who's going to get what land. Okay, we have all this land, but who gets what tribe gets what. And so I think God intervenes, or God tells them exactly what to do, probably because they couldn't come to a consensus how to do this on their own. And so I think a lot of times God intervenes when He needs to, but if the people can make decisions on themselves, then He doesn't have to. And I think that makes Him proud, or makes Him not proud, because proud is not what we want. He makes Him pleased, and there's a big difference between proud and pleased. And we're not to be proud. Proud's a horrible thing, but to be pleased is a good thing. And so I think when God's able to allow His people to make the right choices, or when His people are allowed to make the right choice, or can make the right choices, God allows it. And when the people aren't able to make the right choices, I think is when God intervenes. And I think ideally, the less He intervenes, I think the better He likes it in some degree. But I don't know for sure. I don't know God's heart, but I would imagine that there's or He gets pleased when His people can do things the way that He wants them to do, without Him having to tell them what to do. And I feel like but we always want God's presence, because His presence is awesome. And so we want His presence with us. So sometimes I think that, we'll not do things correctly, or there's a part of us that doesn't want to do things correctly. So God will intervene and help us so that we can see Him, because we get lonely and we want to be around Him. And so it's what's in our heart, God sees these things and understands these things. And we just try to do the best that we can. And we try to follow after the truth and seek after God. And these things that happen are sometimes, you see people do things you don't understand. You're not to judge them, because you don't know why they're doing these things, or what's in their heart, or they might not have felt God's presence in a long time, and they might just want God to be with them and to intervene, because they miss Him so much and His presence so much. And God sees these things, and so that's why we don't want to judge, because we don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and so we don't want to do that. Okay, and then Wednesday is Moses appointed captains. And so, Moses' father-in-law came and told him, okay, this burden that you have is too much. You need to put captains over thousands, captains over hundreds, and I think captains over tens of thousands. I'm not exactly sure the numbers, but, he wants to put captains over a certain amount of people, so that Moses doesn't have to carry the burden himself. And so he does this. And I think that's a really good way to do things. So that way the people can have their own different leaders, and leaders can emerge, because that way you have leaders that can emerge in the society, and they have responsibility. And then I think, like, the more apt people are, then the better the society is, and the better the society will function. And I think that the more leaders there are, then the more that the leaders can, or the more leader aspects that are given to each man, then the man can understand the different leaders, and can understand their strife, and can help them out, and understand where they need help. And so I think the more responsibility, or the more advancement, or the more leaders in a society, then the better the whole society is, because the whole society is full of male leaders. Then each male can lead his family accordingly, and then the leaders that are above him, or have have power over him, then they'll understand that with power comes responsibility, and also comes a lot of problems. And it's not all just good, and it's not all fun and games and pleasurable. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of pain that comes with being a leader. And so if everyone's a leader in some aspect, every male, then they'll understand the difficulties that the other leaders have to endure, and it won't be so difficult or so hard on them. And I think that just makes for a better society. And then for Thursday, have the manslayer and the revenger of blood. This is interesting, because if you have somebody who killed somebody, you have an eye for an eye. And so the manslayer is the person, I'm not exactly sure, but the person that's responsible for carrying out the punishment of killing the person that killed the other person. And so or that's the revenger of blood. The revenger of blood, I'm pretty sure. And the manslayer is the person that killed the other person. But you don't know for sure this person killed this other person by accident. And God makes this big difference in the law of, if somebody kills somebody because they hate them and they wanted to hurt them, or killed somebody on accident. And so there's a big difference. And so how the manslayer goes to a different city, and there's different cities that are pointed to him. And so there's a very thought through and a very well planned out execution of these different events that come to play. And this is all that's written in the law. And I think the law is amazing at the time, and what it was written for, and how great it was, and how much it makes sense, and how applicable it is to real life events. And then Friday, the law. And so the law, obviously, it was kind of like a lot of law, obviously, in Numbers and Deuteronomy, and even in Leviticus. I think there's some law in there, but this is like pretty much, what the Jew is. Like, what is the Jew? The Jew is the law, and the law is the Jew. I feel like, at least in a lot of aspects. And so it just made the Jew what they are. And I think it made the Jews prosper, and that's because God intervened and talked to them directly and gave them this instructions how to live and how to interact with each other and how to interact with the world around them. Um, I think it was a really good lesson and a really good illustration for us through all history and all man to kind of to know what God wants or how God feels about certain things, and how the law plays in man. But that's the Old Testament, and that's like when man was younger, and now man's older, and so the law is like on each person's heart, and the law is dependent on his relationship with his Creator, instead of like a societal thing where the society is the law, and the law is according to the society, and the society's interaction with God. I feel like the law is according to each individual, and the individual's interaction with God and through Christ. And until Christ came, this wasn't possible. But that's just they explain it as, when you're a child, then you have certain rules, and then you're adults, you have a lot more freedom. And so that seems to be like the Old Testament and the New Testament. And it's a bummer, or it's sad, or it's actually really detrimental to the whole entire world and all mankind, for people that hold on to the old law and are still like children, and they don't grow up and put on to the New Testament, where the law is placed in our hearts, and each individual has a relationship with their Creator, and they hold on to the old law. And that's really detrimental to really all existence, all man, especially, at least all men. At least that's how I feel. But I mean, I'm definitely open to change my opinion about these things. I'm just trying to learn and grow as I can. But I hope everyone's doing okay. I hope everyone's doing all right, and I hope that everyone's reading their Bible and kind of following along, at least where they can. And once again, I apologize for the quality of the camera and the quality of the videos that I put out there. Hopefully, I can get some new cameras and some new equipment, so that my videos won't be as low quality, and I can just kind of grow with the church. And it's all about the church. It's all about what God wants. And right now, I feel like with me, I take care of my son, and I take care of my responsibilities, and I would need to take care of the churches, or do my part in the church as much as I can, and grow the church, because I think that truth needs to be spread, and the church of God needs to grow and to be where God wants it to be. And I hope that as time goes, that the church can grow, and I can just grow with it, and to have more responsibilities, and to provide a better, to assist more in the church as God provides me the ability to do so. But I hope everyone's doing okay, and God bless, and happy truth seeking.